Conflict resolution is another trait that's often overlooked in wildlife. Conflicts among social animals are inevitable as individuals compete for food, sex, and power. Yet because they also depend on each other, raising their young, fighting enemies, etc., self-interest demands a certain degree of what may be called peacemaking skills, at least within one's own community. DeWall writes that, like married couples, animals need to maintain good relationships despite flare-ups, and that different animals do this in a variety of ways. All right, here's an excerpt from Our Inner Ape. Golden monkeys reconciled with hand-holding, chimpanzees with a kiss on the mouth, bonobos with sex, and Tonkian macaques with clasping and lip-smacking. Each species follows its own protocol. Take something I've seen repeatedly during reconciliations among apes. After one individual has attacked and bitten another, he or she returns to inspect the inflicted injury. The aggressor knows exactly where to look. This suggests an understanding of cause and effect along the lines of, if I have bitten you, you must now have a gash in the same spot. It suggests that the ape takes on another's perspective, realizing the impact of its own behavior on somebody else. The definition of reconciliation, a friendly reunion between opponents not long after a fight, is straightforward, but the emotions involved are hard to pinpoint. The least that occurs, but this is already truly remarkable, is that negative emotions, such as aggression and fear, are overcome in order to move to a positive interaction, such as a kiss. The bad feelings are reduced or left behind. We experience this transition from hostility to normalization as forgiveness. Forgiveness is sometimes touted as uniquely human, even uniquely Christian, but it may be a natural tendency for cooperative animals. All right. As for primate notions of fairness, DeWall proposes that this went through 3 stages of development. Stage 1 is the resentment we feel when we get less than others. To demonstrate that this emotion exists even in monkeys, DeWall and fellow investigator Sarah Brosnan conducted an experiment that started out by teaching capuchin monkeys to exchange pebbles for cucumbers, which they learned quickly and happily. Once DeWall and Brosnan introduced inequity by giving certain monkeys not cucumbers but the more desirable pay of grapes, the cucumber-receiving monkeys became irritated about being shortchanged. They sulked and sometimes even hurled their cucumber slices away. The food that had they'd been so satisfied with became a symbol of injustice and accordingly had become repulsive. The study was first published in Nature, that's a Nature magazine, on September 18th, 2003, under the title, Monkeys Reject Unequal Pay. And DeWall notes that the article struck a chord, perhaps because, this is quoting DeWall, perhaps because so many people see themselves as cuke eaters in a world with lots of grapes. This is an excerpt now I'm going to read from Nature. A monkey willing to perform a task for a cucumber may refuse to do so if its partner is given a tasty grape. In balking at this unequal pay, the monkey is surely being irrational, rejecting food that is an offer. But the negative emotion of unfairness and the refusal to accept inequitable situations has been a positive influence in the long term in the development of human society. And the same evolutionary pressures seem to have prevailed in other primates as well. All right, I'm going to read now an excerpt from a New York Times coverage of that study. A New York Times article was called Genetic Basis to Fairness, Study Hints. And this is also published on September 18th, 2003. All right, the Times article says, "It's not fair" is a common call from the playground and, in subtler form, from more adult assemblies. It now seems that monkeys, too, have a sense of fairness, a conclusion suggesting that this feeling may be part of the genetically programmed social glue that holds primate societies together, monkeys as well as humans. Stage 2 in the development of our notion of fairness starts with concerns of how others will react if we're the ones who are getting the preferential treatment. DeWall notes that monkeys, which are a more distant relative to us than apes, aren't concerned about the reactions of others. The lucky grape recipient capuchins could have shared their grapes with their disadvantaged neighbors, but never did. In fact, the grape recipients would even cheerfully scoop up and eat the cucumbers that their disgruntled neighbors had thrown away. Apes, however, do occasionally demonstrate this type of empathy. Also, on the previous page, I had a footnote that said, in everyday language, the word ape and monkey are often used interchangeably. Strictly speaking, however, apes, and that means chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans, are not monkeys. And the easiest way to tell the difference is that apes don't have tails. And I go into some more details, but I'll skip that for this YouTube video. All right, back where I left off. Apes, however, do occasionally demonstrate this type of empathy. When a bonobo named Panbanisha, for example, received highly prized snacks such as raisins, other members of her colony noticed and moved close to her cage, clamoring for the same treats. Panbanisha reacted by calling for her caretaker to bring more snacks, but she wouldn't accept the food when it arrived and instead waved her arm in her friend's directions. DeWall writes, here's another excerpt from Our Inner Ape. What fascinates me is the connection with resentment. All one needs for the larger sense of fairness is to develop all one needs for the larger sense of fairness to develop is anticipation of the resentment of others. There are excellent reasons to avoid arousing bad feelings. Someone failing to share is excluded from feeding clusters. At worst, the one who being envied risks being beaten up. Was this why Panbanisha avoided conspicuous consumption in front of her friends? If so, we're getting close to what may be the source of the fairness principle, conflict avoidance.